Welcome to Corporate Law Lab. We are in our Business of the Law series, and we're lucky enough to be joined by two managing partners today. One current, one former, George Vincent and Josh Lorentz of Dinsmore and Scholl. I'll let you guys figure out as you talk which one is which. Why don't we start with you, George? You graduated from Michigan twice, 79 and 82, so you went straight through.
Straight through.
And why'd you decide to go to law school?
My dad is a lawyer, was a lawyer. He's deceased now, but he loved practicing law. His father had a law degree but never practiced. His grandfather was a lawyer in Seattle at the turn of the century, last century. So it was kind of in our blood. I liked to read. I liked to study. It was kind of a natural thing. It was either that or business school. I took the GMAT and the LSAT. My dad's only brother was an investment banker. He owned his own banking firm. I was tempted, but law school and something I wanted to do, and that's ended up in Michigan. Lucky enough.
So how was what did you major in undergrad?
Political science.
Don't we all?
In fact,
the only science.
Yeah, I'm on the political science advisory board at Michigan still.
Great.
I love school. I love political science.
Well, I hope you made better use of your degree. I managed to specialize in the Russian political system right before it completely fell apart, and everything I learned was irrelevant unless you go to the most boring cocktail party in the world and you can hear me go on about Brezhnev and Andropov.
Well, I wrote my senior thesis on Soviet-Finnish relations. So
there we go.
Common Russian interest.
How did you find the transition to law school?
It was too easy. I had 4 roommates in undergrad. 2 of us went to law school. 2 guys went to graduate business school. 1 guy went to graduate architecture school. Nothing changed. Same apartment, same roommates. Easy.
Amazing. If I'd had the same roommates, I would not be sitting here because I actually told one of my friends I was considering whether to go back to IU where I went to undergrad or go to UC. And my friend said, you've proved you can't study in Bloomington. Maybe you can study here. So what stood out from your law school experience as you look back on it?
I enjoyed almost all of it. Great people. I liked the intellectual challenge. I don't think I missed a class except to go on callbacks. Get up without the alarm, so it wasn't stressful for me. We had a lot of fun. I enjoyed the intellectual byplay. I'd do it again if I could.
What attracted you to Dinsmore? You came here straight out of law school, correct?
I was a summer clerk here, actually, in
Right.
1981. I knew I wanted to stay in the Midwest, so I looked in Milwaukee, Chicago, Detroit, and here. I had a college, one of my roommates was from here, the suburb of Wyoming. And I liked the fact there were major league sports here. I liked the people I met. And one day, I was here, I spent all day. They took me out to dinner. We had a great time. It was only 3.5 hours to my parents' home, so it was going to be kind of an easy summer. I came for the summer, had a really great experience. I did interesting work. I saw the firm starting to grow. They made me an offer. I accepted, and I've been here ever since.
And ever since, people have been asking you, where did you go to high school?
And I say Detroit Lutheran West. I go, where's that? It's just West Side. Oh, okay.
The Detroit doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in the West Side last week as the 5th speaker of 5, and everybody before me went to their connections to the West Side. And I got up and said, fine, let's just get this out of the way. I went to Turpin.
Yeah, and
I've crossed I-75, but only to go to IU.
Right.
How did you choose corporate work? Or did corporate work choose you?
Kind of both. So again, I thought I'd go into business school. I took 4 semesters of accounting. I liked business. Nolan Carson was head of the corporate department at the time. He took an interest in me that summer. He and 2 other guys took me out for drinks. Kind of pushed the corporate thing. My dad's a labor lawyer, so it was kind of what I thought I was going to do. But the corporate thing made a lot of sense. I tell people it's one of the 5 smartest decisions of my life. I liked it. I enjoyed it.
We'll get to the other 4, but let's let Josh talk a little bit. Josh, you went to OU undergrad?
That's right.
Where are you from?
I went to Centerville High School. If we're sticking with high schools.
You have a BS and a BA.
That's right. Biology and political science. One science wasn't enough. I had to take the main science.
There you go.
Political science.
And then Dayton for law school?
Dayton for law.
Okay. for you, how was the transition from all that science to law?
Actually, it was easy. The funny thing is, we talked about George's direct route. Always knew, same undergrad, same law school, same roommates. You knew the whole time. I'm the type of person, at least I was, that I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. Not because I didn't like anything. I just tended to like everything. Early on in high school and college, I thought for sure I was going to be a doctor. Hence the biology, all of the things I did in the summer to work toward that. And one day I woke up and thought, I sure seem to like debate in high school. I sure seem to like these poli-sci classes. This medical stuff can be difficult. These anatomy classes, I keep getting B pluses. Maybe law is the way to go. So I had retooled. I went to did a summer internship on the Hill with the House Budget Committee, and I fell in love with the law after that. Decided I was going to go to law school. Didn't stop me from taking the MCAT and the LSAT and the GMAT. Again, a person that likes everything as opposed to doesn't like anything. And then we ended up in law school and take it down the road a little bit. I thought that I'd be hospital administration. I thought it'd be litigation, straight litigation. And I ran into some folks that had a background in IP, patent law. They asked what my background was, and I had the science degree. And it led to an IP career and ultimately changing classes and headed down the IP track.
So like George, how did you choose IP work, or did it choose you because of your science background and, hey, there's a scientist, let's make him work on this?
Yeah, definitely chose me in terms of being in law school at Dayton at the time, had a great IP program with Professor Christ at the time, and UC has had and still has a great IP group and curriculum. But ultimately, I knew that was going to be the best place for me to spend my time, and I knew I wanted to do big law. I knew I wanted to stay in Cincinnati, and IP was a really great way to go. And at the time, and still it is, it's a challenging field of practice. It's still a specialty. There aren't a ton of people that are lawyers with a science degree. And so one thing led to another, and 24 years later, here we are as an IP attorney.
So you joined in 2001. Was George the managing partner when you joined, or about to become?
Not
Just in my mind. Yeah.
I was going to say not yet.
Well, you were running the place, just not nobody else knew.
I was going to say not yet. It was just a matter of time. But
so how would you describe the firm culture when you joined? And then we'll work backwards to what George thought of the firm culture.
it was very entrepreneurial at the time. It was in the midst of unprecedented growth, and it was exciting to be a part of and to want to be a part of. You want to be at a place, even when you're a 25, 26-year-old young person, that has its horizon in front of you, right? And that you can see with a growth pattern that isn't stale, that was looking to the future. And George is the big reason why I chose Dinsmore. He's had that view, and the firm has adopted that view. That growth that we've experienced when I joined in 2001 was in large part because of George, as he's over here staring at me, stop talking about me. But it's the way that it's ingrained in our culture as a firm that you're looking to the future and you're looking to always grow. And that was exciting to me even at 26.
George, was it that way when you joined, or is that something that evolved in your first 20 years here?
It was a different firm. It was a different world. I was a summer clerk again in 1981. There were 58 lawyers. We had 2.5 floors, DuBois Tower, and we had a temporary office with like one out in Claremont County. That was our big expansion. We had a guy who was in Claremont County 3 days a week. Everybody knew everybody else. Everybody socialized together. So the staff and the lawyers would go out, even some of the younger partners. And the older partners didn't really have to work. They were more gentleman lawyers because they had lots of money. I was not in that boat. I wanted to work and get after it. Then I came back. The firm had grown to, I think, 70 lawyers because the rely tampon litigation was consuming an awful lot of time for people. So the firm started to grow. We then ended up with 5 floors. We moved here in 1991, and the firm has kind of grown aggressively ever since then.
So that early growth, was that limited to the Cincinnati
Yes.
office?
Yes.
Okay. So you went from 58 lawyers to, I don't know how many, when you started?
70,
on-
that we probably got that night. We opened a small office in northern Kentucky. I pointed to the south. Then in northern Kentucky, probably late 80s or
Okay.
90, 91. And then we started looking for more opportunities in Ohio. We went to Columbus. We went to Dayton with a couple of people and grew from there.
And then, I don't know, I should have done more research on when all of your mergers happened. I know about one of them because my friend Dave Schaefer became part of the
Yeah.
firm through the merger with the firm in Louisville. Was that the first big one, or were there others before that?
We did a significant one in Columbus about the same time, but Woodward Hobson was 50 lawyers. That was a big deal, getting them in Louisville and Lexington. That changed the firm.
So between the time that you joined and when you became managing partner, how much had the firm culture changed, and what do you attribute it to?
I think that the culture in Cincinnati, by and large, stayed the same, but every office has its own personality. And at that point, we were in Columbus, Cleveland, Dayton, Louisville, Lexington. So each of those offices takes on its own way of looking at things, and that changes the culture at large because you take the good and you take the bad and kind of mix it together and get what you currently have. But we've always, in my time, focused on four things, four pillars. You got to make money, you got to be profitable, you got to be good, strive for excellence every day. You got to be collegial, you got to get along with people in the office, and if you don't, there's a problem. And you got to get involved in the community. You can't just come to work and go home. You got to do something else. And I think those four things have defined us in my 43 years here, that by and large people buy into that and agree with that and share that.
Is that something that you personally emphasized more so when you became managing partner?
Every single meeting, I'd hit those four things because you got the things you believe in, you've got to repeat. So people say, what are the four pillars? I think everybody in the firm could say, yeah, that's what George said. That's what we stand for.
That's right.
Okay, I know he's sitting right here, but Josh, when you became managing partner, what did you want to preserve and what did you want to change in the
Everything.
firm's culture?
You know, in all seriousness, what George went through with our pillars, those are our grounding principles, and those are still alive today. Talented, likable people who don't take themselves too seriously is a way that I say a little bit of the same thing. I wanted us to preserve being a place where people feel accepted, people fit in, where there aren't a bunch of unfair, unreasonable, rigid rules, and where we have an entrepreneurial spirit, where the partnership wants to grow, where the partnership wants to look forward. All those things are the firm I joined and the firm that I inherited as managing partner. The one thing that was on my mind is to continue that. And in fact, before I became managing partner, some people would ask, where do you want the firm to be in 10 years? And I'd say, easy, in business.
Yeah.
Don't mess it up. But some of the things I wanted to change is we had grown so much and so strongly and miraculously in a lot of ways and across the country. I wanted to add on to our culture of seizing opportunities. In other words, we have coast to coast, upper middle market, Midwestern based law firm with great practices across the nation, with great geographies across the nation. And I've been focused a lot on additional, not new, additional collaboration and connecting dots to really make that 1 + 1. George always said 1 + 1 = 3, and we wouldn't do a deal without it. But to try to make that 1 + 1 that we put together sometimes equal 4 by connecting these extra dots that we had built and grown over the course of time.
So we'll come back to the geographical
Okay,
and,
one
and
thing-
number of offices. Go ahead.
It's important for a firm to continue to evolve. And what was important for my generation is going to be different by definition for the next generation. And what you don't want is people leaders staying on too long. And at 65, when I had to step down, it was time. Because when you get people 35 years old, they see the world differently than I did at 65. And we needed someone like Josh to come in and take the firm where it's going to go next. And it's been great watching as the firm evolves and continues to shift and focus on things that it needs to focus on today. That's I think the gift of management changing, because you got to have new ideas, new thoughts, new perspectives. Because I've been here for so long, I knew what I knew. I didn't know what I didn't know. And you need the next generation to step up and do that, and he's done it.
So let's talk about, before we get into all the mergers and growth you did, you were the managing partner during the Great Recession. How was it leading the firm through that period? How did Dinsmore weather that storm?
Come on, I'm going to brag about the firm a little bit. So I became co-managing partner with Cliff Rowe, my predecessor, 2007. So we overlapped for a year. Then I took over by myself in 2008. You may recall, those were not the best economic times in our country's history. And we started seeing layoffs, starting classes postponed, starting classes canceled. So I called the board together, and I said, we always talk about how collegial we are, how great we are. We're going to find out, because tough times tell you who you are. We didn't lay anybody off. We had a summer class like we always did. People started in September like they always did. That was the plan. I took the partners, laid it all out, unanimous vote, stay the course. Equity partners made 27% less in 08 than they made in 07. Not one person left.
Wow.
And I don't think, I hate to say this in public, you're not going to find out a firm, and Amwell 200, I think, who can say that and be honest about it. Who are you comes out when times are tough. Used to say, we're collegial, but we're going to fire 15% of the associates and we're not going to do summer class, but we're still collegial. No, you're not. So all of us are pretty proud of that.
Yes.
We all weathered that. The firm got better. We were blessed because we laid nobody off. So when times got good, we had a full complement of associates ready to go, and that benefited us.
And I think that's George's leadership and the leadership of the board that George was part of. But that's the culture that George and others, and I try to carry on today. Culture isn't just how do you feel when you walk down the hall. It's what decisions do you make when times are tough. And that leads to who we are. And in fact, when we tell that story to some of our merger candidates, which are much smaller than we are at any time so far, almost everybody to a T, George, made that same decision in 08, albeit much, much smaller. And when you do those types of things, you know that you align.
So let's get into the
But those were
mergers.
tough times, as you know. It was an interesting. Every day is bad news. More layoffs, firms collapsing, banks, stocks. General Motors goes bankrupt. People forget how tough that was.
I got to take over in 2023, not 2008.
Yeah.
I had tailwinds.
I was lucky in 2008. I happened to be having just landed at Millicom International Cellular, which was growing 40% year on year in emerging markets telecoms, and we went down to 10% growth, and everybody freaked out. And I was like, guys,
We're growing.
we're growing. It's okay. We'll be fine. Just we can slow down on the hiring, but not everybody has to go away, because in the tech downturn, the 2001. The company I worked for, Avnet, went from 14 billion revenue to 8 in 1 year. And we had to go from 16,000 employees to 10,000, which was just absolutely brutal.
Yep.
And there just wasn't, when you lose 6 billion in revenue, you can't say, hey, let's all just hang in here together. It's just not possible.
Right.
But so talking about, we talked a bit about the organic growth in Cincinnati and in the immediately surrounding area. Now the firm is 30 offices, is that correct?
That's right.
And coast to coast, or
Coast to coast, from LA to
Boston.
DC, yep.
so why did you embark on geographical expansion?
I felt that it needed to be in certain places to service clients who needed things coast to coast. So California was important. So we went to California in 2015, maybe around then. And now we've got 2 offices there, 3, 2 offices. We found the right person to kind of start things, and he brought folks with him, and we've grown organically out there because I think we are the right people. You get good results. And then we were lucky enough to have some people in Boston that we knew real well, and they were looking for a new platform, and that's been, I think, exceptionally good for us. They had a nice book of business. We knew them already, which made it easier. We opened a DC office. That was probably the first foray to one of the coasts, and we had some people we knew. We got lucky and we've been able to grow. But if you're going to be 750 lawyers, 800 lawyers, you've got to be, I think, coast to coast to service the needs of the client you want to attract.
So how did you go about selecting merger partners? Was it people you already knew in markets, or did you hire somebody to go find me lawyers? How did you go about that process?
I'll speak to, prior to Josh, there's almost always somebody we knew. So folks in Louisville, Lexington, we did Woodward Hobson. We had smaller offices, and our folks knew people at Woodward Hobson and thought a lot of them. That's easy. Indianapolis, we'd worked with people in Indianapolis for many years. It was easy. Columbus, we knew those folks. Dayton, we knew the people. So if you know folks, you're bound by more than just money. There's a personal relationship that sometimes can smooth the waves when things get difficult. And that was kind of our focus. We wanted to know people inside the firm that we were talking to.
And when you're in Lexington, Louisville, Indianapolis, Dayton, Columbus, you've got nowhere you can't be you could drive to every lunch meeting at that point, right?
Right.
When you started expanding beyond that,
I drive faster.
So. He's serious.
Yeah. He's serious.
Yeah, when you expand beyond, you have to be a little more intentional. It can't be last minute type things. And I found out in 2023 when I tried to do a 100-day tour of all of our offices just to go back to back and to be able to see everybody. When you're trying to get through Denver in the winter, it can be a challenge when you try to get from Denver to LA. Going to Miami in July, I should have hit that one in January. I learned, right? But you just have to be more intentional, and you have to set it up, because you're right. It takes a flight, and sometimes it takes a connecting flight, and you may have to set that up in a couple weeks in advance as opposed to a week or two in advance. But I'll tell you this. While our friends in Kentucky and West Virginia and Indiana love to see us, when you make the trek out to California or to Florida, folks really do appreciate it because they know it was difficult.
They're not just, I don't know, my experience, but I was like, when I was in Phoenix and our headquarters in Europe was in Munich, I was pretty sure that there was somebody assigned to make sure I got back on the plane. He's here, let him see what he's going to see, but, don't go out of your way to show him anything. How much is Cincinnati still considered, the managing partner is here, is Cincinnati still considered HQ in Dinsmore, or?
In my opinion, it's not. Others may think differently. It's because of how we espouse our growth and where we sit. It's my view that we have a collection of practice areas, collection of offices, and that, yes, while the managing partner sits here and always has in Cincinnati, and while, yes, we have the most attorneys for one office here in Cincinnati, we have far more partners and attorneys outside of Cincinnati. So if anything, we're a outside of Cincinnati firm than we are a Cincinnati firm. And it's important that if you're going to have a firm that's coast to coast with this many offices and geographies and practice areas, that I don't espouse an HQ with just one firm with long hallways.
I guess I'm getting to, how did you get those firms to get comfortable being Dinsmore instead of Woodward and Hobson or whatever they were before? How did you get over that? We're going to be part of something that we're getting swallowed by you. It's not a merger of equals, I would guess.
There are almost always mergers, but obviously our name survives and we have more people. I think it's a couple things. One, if you're a mid-sized firm and 15 years ago and today, it's challenging. How do you go out and get talent? Because it's hard to pay the salaries that larger firms are paying. It's hard to give people a career path.
So starting associates are not getting $260,000 here?
We're not discounting it.
Okay.
We're not going to cut people's comp down. So that's one. The firm that you're talking to has to come to a conclusion that they need to do something, and that may not be sure what that is, but they want to do something. That's number one. Number two, if you know people, they can call up and say, "Josh, we've been approached by your firm. What do you think?" And I think by and large, people said, "I love it here. You're going to be a great fit." So our people sell it internally to the people they know. And third, you show a path. Here's what we think the future looks like. In 10 years, we think we can be here. with you, we're going to get there faster. You're going to have representation on the board, probably, because the firm's large enough. So you have someone who's going to be a conduit, and you're going to know exactly what's going on in management. You're going to have a voice in compensation. And all that together is oftentimes very persuasive.
How important was it to you guys that the firms you were talking to were already well managed? Or did you look at opportunities and say, oh, that firm, they're doing X, they could be doing 1 + 1 = 5 if they were managing their
Both.
better?
We saw both.
Yeah.
Some places, were really well managed. Other folks, they're kind of drifting, struggling. Founder had died, founder retired, and what's next? What are we going to do?
But nearly everybody, to my recollection, ran themselves in a fiscally responsible way.
No spendthrifts. We tend to be thrifty here. And people who join us tend to be thrifty.
I've actually heard one of your partners, I won't mention who it is, say that the way that copper wire is made around here is that they throw a penny down around either one of you and watch you try
That's
and
a
see how much
compliment.
you can squeeze
Thank
out
you.
of it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I take that to heart.
Yeah. I think they meant it as a compliment.
My theory was I'd rather take the money home than spend it on stuff that makes it look impressive. I don't care. I want the money.
And we're more than happy to invest in ourselves, in our lawyers, in our associates, in our business professionals. But we have to see an ROI, and particularly with certain of our partners, if our partner believes passionately in a project or an opportunity and willing to lean in, that's worth it to us all day, typically.
Do synergies matter at all in a law firm merger? I mean, doing large company mergers that I did for years, they were all about synergies, which was, code for how many people and places you could get rid of. Does it matter at all in a law firm
Yes,
merger?
it does matter.
Okay. How?
Not as much as in the corporate world. You're going to have people who are nearing retirement say, I don't want to do it, and they're going to step aside. We never had a plan to cause attrition, but attrition will happen. That's number one. Number two, a larger firm, you can probably charge higher rates. It's tough in a smaller firm to raise rates like you're going to have to raise them in today's world. We give people, because those sons of bitches in Cincinnati are making me do this. You can blame somebody else. It's not your fault anymore. So we can do things that a smaller firm really can't do or is not able to do. And those are attractive synergies for everybody.
Yeah, there has to be a reason why you're getting together from both sides. There has to be that we have clients that have needs there. They have clients that have needs in depth across what Dinsmore can give them. But synergies also include the likability. I always say that when we're looking at a merger, George, you may have different percentages or may have a different view. I think 40% is whether you like each other. And you typically know that in the first few minutes. 40% is figuring out whether the comp models can work. Then the rest, the final 20%, is just putting together the rest of the deal. But it starts with the 40% likability, which you know pretty soon.
So you've had conversations where in the first 5 minutes you're like, okay, I have to do this for long enough to be polite, but I am not going to be part of, this firm is not going to be part of Dinsmore?
Yeah, and it may not be because you technically don't like that person. It may be
Right.
because you know that the cultures aren't going to mesh. They have a different viewpoint. And like I said, the cultures could be whether you're an open system, whether you're a transparent system, whether you're a democratic system. We know what works for us, and we also know that if a firm doesn't see the world similar to us, not exactly the same way, but similar, you know at the outset it may not work. And you're happy to have met the person, you move on.
So on democracy, I mean, when you first got here, George, I suspect that it was probably quite democratic because there were enough partners that they could fit around this table and all have a voice and reach some level of unanimity. I assume with 850 lawyers, you don't wait for unanimity anymore before you make decisions.
We're kind of unique. To your first point,
Okay.
we used to have monthly lunches at the Bankers Club. Ran out of room, that ended. But we've kept the same structure for elections. Every equity partner has a vote, and every election is by secret ballot. Every partner who's eligible is on that ballot. There's no nominating committee. There's no vetting. So when Josh got elected managing partner, every equity partner's name was there. You circled who you wanted, or you clicked on who you wanted. And if you campaign, you've pretty much excluded yourself from being elected. That's our culture. So it's kind of an Athenian democracy. That's what I was described when I first arrived. Everybody gets a vote, and whoever gets the majority of, you have to have an absolute majority, and we'll winnow the field down. But you have to have an absolute majority of your partners to be elected to any management spot in the firm. And we've maintained that all these years.
That takes a little bit of time, sometimes a lot of time. And you talk about unanimity. George and I know it. We would work that extra couple days, that extra week, if that meant getting a couple more people on board, as opposed to just having their no votes. We think unanimous vote is the best vote you can get.
So my 16 years managing partner did compensation every year. I had one no vote. It's secret ballot. One no vote, 16 years. We work hard to build consensus.
Did you find out who that was?
Yeah,
and punish them?
he's gone.
Yeah, okay.
never found out. But you work hard to build consensus, and you've got representation by geography, representation by practice group. So everybody's got two people they can talk to. And you say, we're going to do our best to get close. And sometimes there's things, we're not a formulaic compensation. We have 14 factors we look at. And somebody's, well, that person's making less than I would have thought. Well, there's always a reason. And somebody, you ask a question, and the person on the board will say, well, here's why. Someone's making more than I thought, and here's why. And you build that trust, you build those relationships. People think, okay, I trust them to make the right decision. But we have to pay, it takes a 2/3 vote here to pass any change in compensation up. So we do compensation, it's a 2/3 vote, and you sweat. I still worry about it in my sleep.
Just a little
go
less
ahead.
than a couple years ago.
Yeah.
You said earlier, if somebody goes out and campaigns, they will pretty much eliminate themselves. It reminds me of, the firm I started at, one of the founders famously said, the people who are interested in becoming law firm managers are the people that you need to keep away from law firm management. I asked Ken
Which firm is that?
Lewis and Roca.
You started Lewis and Roca?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah.
I'll be darned.
Yeah. And so how do you become managing partner if you can't campaign for it? The question I was going to ask you is, did you actively seek the role? But it sounds like you wouldn't have got it if you were out in everybody's office saying, vote for me, I'm the best.
I think people assumed I was going to be managing partner quite a while before I was. Some clerks ask, when did you always make managing partner? I said, maybe after the first month, not initially. But I liked what I saw. I thought I'd be pretty good at it. I ran a finance committee for 10 years before I became managing partner. I like money. I like numbers. I'm good with numbers. So I think people just assumed. My predecessor, Cliff Rowe, and I were very close, worked in the same department, worked together for many years. I didn't campaign, but I think it was just expected. I think every vote but one. Cliff told me.
So how much were you able to maintain your practice, and how much did you have to give it up to run the firm, and did that change over time as the firm grew?
It changed as the firm grew. It was harder. My initial thought was I can keep practicing, and that was true for a couple of months. And as the firm grew, it got harder and harder, so you had to pass more things down and delegate. That's a hard skill, as you know, to learn, but you have no choice. You can't run a multi-$100 million business and practice law and do deal work where you're working around the clock weeks at a time. You can't do it.
Now, what George has always done very well, and what I've tried to model myself after is, yes, the actual practice gets minimized, but we're still maintaining all the relationships plus the new ones that we've generated. And I even think about all of the relationships you've had with the clients in the city and the community and otherwise, and I've tried to emulate that myself. And in fact, earlier in February, I flew literally around the world in 10 days to stop in Saudi Arabia and Japan to see two significant clients that I help manage, because while I'm not doing the day-to-day work, it's often that they still want to see me, and your clients still want to see you. And when something's really important, they at least, at a minimum, want you in on the decision-making process.
So now that you have handed over the reins to Josh, how hard has it been to reestablish your practice to the level you want, or was it because it was at a certain point in your career you were happy to be the wise man?
Something.
Well, I was going to put another adjective in there, but I decided to go with wise.
I guess I've been lucky to be able to do kind of what I wanted to do. So it's episodic as things come in. I'm doing more than I would have done before. I think last month I built more hours than I built by 15 years. But I take more time. I was go to Florida a little more than I used to. I'm not going to run a significant deal, but I'm going to have input. I'm going to help more than I would have before.
Did either of you have experience managing teams before you started managing the firm? And, how, I know for you probably managed, I don't know, did you manage a department? You said you were on the finance
But
committee.
Josh is a better example. Josh ran the IP group. He built the IP group single-handedly. He took a dysfunctional, disorganized group and structured it. He had a plan that you had to be deep in multiple specialties, and he executed that plan to perfection. He did a hell of a job building that group, which is a powerful group.
I appreciate that, George.
It's all true.
No, I appreciate
It's all
you.
true.
Here's the thing. George talks about we don't campaign. You're on a ballot with every equity partner. I think what our partners respect, they respect hard work, they respect intellect, and they respect people who put the firm in front of themselves. I can't say I have all those attributes, but I know George has, and that's kind of what I've tried to follow. So while I don't know, George, I don't think everybody assumed it was me, certainly not early on. Took a little bit.
I did.
He did. He told me 10 years ago, he said, I can see the future, you can't. I remember you telling me that. Anyway, but most of the people that rise into practice group roles, department roles, committee roles, have put their hand up, have had success in other roles in the firm, and have shown that they're willing to put the firm over themselves time and time again.
Well, let's embarrass him a little bit, George. What were you seeing 10 years before that he didn't see about himself?
There's three things. One, he had the vision for the group, and the people who had led the group or were leading the group didn't have that vision. It was just kind of a hodgepodge, and that's nice. But he said we got to deep in electric. He had mapped out the subspecialties he had to have in IP to be a full service, full-fledged IP group. He had that as an associate. Number two, he was hungry. Really wanted it. He wanted to succeed. He wanted to build the group. He wanted to build his own practice. But he cared about his peers, which again separated him from a lot of the other folks in that group at the time. And the third thing, he understood it was a business. It wasn't just a practice law, but it was a business, and it needed to be run somewhat like a business. And those are three things you don't typically see in a young partner. He was looking beyond where he was, and he wanted the firm to be more than it was at the time. That's the key element that I saw.
How different?
Yes, I'm embarrassed. Thank you.
Good.
It's all true. You crushed it.
Well, it's audio, but Josh did turn red.
I did.
Through that whole thing. So when you talk about managing lawyers, people always say, well, that's impossible. You can't manage lawyers. I've famously been told that I'm the hardest person in the world to manage because I don't really care what you think.
You're a lawyer.
Because I'm a lawyer. I know
right.
better than you
That's
do.
right.
Especially if, and I've worked for like 6 different CEOs, none of them lawyers, many of them had not managed a lawyer before getting me. So I think it was their fault, not mine, that I was so difficult, but we'll go with it.
It's your podcast. You win.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
How different was it managing the firm from managing a department? And when we say, managing lawyers, is that really a thing? Or are you at a much higher plane other than saying, I understand you're not saying, hey, George, do this, now do that, now do this. There's a question in here somewhere. I think
Yeah.
you sort of got it.
Yeah. So I view management in terms of an inverse triangle, right? Where I'm on the bottom of
Wait.
the inverse.
We really should have done video so that we could get drawing here. Okay, inverse triangle.
There's
I
the
gotcha.
nerdy coming out. Maybe not for the first time, but you hear it. But I feel as though management should be at the bottom of an inverse triangle, trying to support and lift people up, particularly lawyers, right? Because you're correct. Lawyers don't want to be told what to do. But here's what I found. if you can be supportive, if you can ask questions, not make demands, but if you can ask questions, if you can provide guidance, but not requirements, and then with logic of why you're providing the guidance and the questions, lawyers will buy in. Because while lawyers can be difficult to manage because they don't want to be told what to do, lawyers want to do the right thing. They want to be successful. They want to be part of a team. And if you understand that and you help guide, not require or mandate, you can get a lot out of lawyers. And I feel like following George's footsteps, that's what we do here.
Anything to add?
Every managing partner would give you a different answer to that question.
Yeah.
Because it's your own style, your own preference. I'm more of an anarchist. I had one rule: we'll treat you like a professional until you prove otherwise.
Yep.
Did the firm do anything formal to help you become a better manager, leader?
Oh, hell no.
No?
That makes too much sense. I went to a couple managing partner seminars at Brad Hildebrand,
Yeah.
which I thought were really good in San Francisco. But here's how small the world is. So Brad Hildebrand, famous guy. I'm Lutheran. I have a place in Naples. I go to Lutheran church. Look up there. This guy looks really familiar. Brad Hildebrand's a Lutheran minister. He's pastor at Faith Lutheran in Naples, Florida.
Really?
What are the chances? What are the odds? I look up and said, Brad, you were Dinsmore. Yeah, that guy was remarkable. But that was helpful, but you figure it out by doing it. And if you've been at the firm for a long time, you've seen how things work. And you've seen who was effective and who wasn't effective. And you've either earned confidence or you haven't. You have people's confidence, just kind of go and push people in the right direction and things work.
Well, and I'll add to that. We've been incredibly stable for the past 30 years. When George came in 2008, he was surrounded by a board, not of everyone, but of many people who had been here in leadership roles as part of the fabric of the firm. But same thing happened to me. And I think having those people around you that have at least seen the history, even if we wanted to chart a different course, knew the way the things are and how we got there, and wanted to be part of the team and carry us forward. I think that was helpful along the way. Because a lot of times, particularly with George, but I think even I fall in this boat, nobody has to tell us the light's green. They need us to pump the brakes sometimes.
I was going to ask, but I'm not sure it makes sense based on your last answer, but I'll ask anyway. Did you find some need for firm-wide consistency that you needed to enforce, and did that conflict with the autonomy of individual partners, or did you really choose towards autonomy and, we'll step in if you need us?
I'm more the latter.
Yeah.
I think the firm needs more of the former today.
Why?
We're bigger, larger. You need a little more structure, a few more guardrails. When you start with 58 lawyers and you literally know everybody, you kind of keep that ethos going forward. Josh joined, the firm was already pretty large. So things I could get away with because I knew everybody and everybody had been hired literally while I was here. It's different. And I think the firm needed and has benefited by having more structure since Josh took over. We needed it.
Thanks, George. But the key is, I should say, again, not mandates. I tried not to say policy. And this, you probably like get a chuckle.
I say structure.
Yeah, structure or guidance or process, right? Not policy or mandates. But I think that people all across the country, because of our size, they appreciate knowing what the base expectations are. They don't want to be micromanaged, but they appreciate knowing the expectation, and particularly this newer generation, a lot of folks want to see it or something in writing. And the thought that we're going to get out and talk to everybody and tell us about expectations and the laws on apprenticeship and here's how Dinsmore works, all this, that's helpful. You still have to do that. But I think people want to see what the expectations are a little bit more. But again, they don't want to be talked at, and they don't want mandates.
You mentioned transparency before, and I think it's, when I was a law firm associate, I had no idea, well, I had some idea, but I had no official idea what partner compensation was. I wasn't supposed to know what my fellow associates were making. course, all the associates know what every other associate is making.
Indeed.
How do you deal with that? But that was expected, when I started practicing 30 years ago. Now I think there's much more of a demand from the people coming out now for transparency. How have you reacted to that?
I think it's important to let people know where they stand. I think it's important to let people know as much as you can about the finances of the law firm. And George says something very gracious about me, that as at a young age, I understood that the practice of law is a business. I think that all attorneys should have some understanding of the business of law. And if that means that we need to discuss with associates, and certainly with partners, we do with partners, but with associates, dollars in, dollars out, profitability models, et cetera, I think that's important. And I think that the attorneys appreciate knowing, again, what the expectations are. Business professionals, how much of a business of law do they need to understand? Maybe not as much, but I think they like to know if the firm's doing well, because it gives them comfort and security in their job. And letting folks know how the firm's doing to give them that security, I think is important on at least an annual basis, if not more.
So we were just talking about young lawyers and, or I shouldn't say young, newly minted lawyers. And, so one thing we talked about was transparency. I think one thing that they're all worried about while they're also using it is AI. How do you think about the impact of AI on associates starting their careers?
You have to take it seriously. You look across the nation, across the world, everyone's talking about AI and AI making things more efficiently. And if you resist making things more efficient, you're going to be left on the outside. So you have to take it seriously, and you have to find a way to incorporate AI in daily tasks. I think AI can do a number of things in the legal field. It can help coordinate information faster. It can help put things to paper or to keystroke quicker. The days of searching hour after hour after hour on a search database for an answer are already behind us, as some of the legal publications are getting quicker. So you have to embrace it. You don't necessarily have to lead the way, but you have to understand the landscape and what the opportunities are. Because these individuals are coming out of law school, they know how to use AI, and they're going to expect a law firm that's sophisticated on that front. Now, having said that, as I'd mentioned earlier, I still think the practice of law is an apprenticeship. And AI can't be a substitute for trying to figure out how to solve a problem. An engineered prompt that gives you an answer that goes straight to the supervising attorney or straight to the client, that's not going to be good for anybody in terms of a bunch of for a bunch of different reasons. But I do think you want your newer associates to be sure they know how to find an answer and all of the things that go into being resourceful to find the answer. So AI is important, but you can't lose the apprenticeship of the law aspect.
Do you think of it as a tool like, scientific calculators replace the slide rule, or is it more than that? Some people worry that people aren't going to learn how to become a lawyer if the AI does all of that work.
But those people were not going to be lawyers when we came up. Some people always took the easy way out. I think those folks are always going to self-select.
Yeah, because there's no supplement or substitute for judgment. When we think about, George said he's busy last month, and I know what he was working on. It's because he has the judgment over years and years of being a great lawyer. The things and the decisions I make for the clients that I help serve, it's based on almost 25 years of judgment. If you do too much and have too much done for you, you're not going to be able to utilize that judgment that really takes into the human factor into account that I don't think AI is ever going to be able to replicate.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is that right now, generative AI, if this is generative AI, is still nowhere near as smart as us. It knows far more about a wide range of subjects, but in terms of depth and knowledge, Joey, our producer, and I tested it again last week because I keep spouting this stuff, and I was like, maybe I should check in since the last time I asked the AI a question on something I considered myself an expert on was a year or so ago. So because I wrote this paper on Ohio versus EPA, I've read that case 300 times probably. So we asked the AI to summarize some of it, and it got it in the ballpark, but not anywhere near somebody that has truly studied it. And it's not like you can tell the AI to go study more. Its answer is its answer. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a question about the amount of efficiency though that AI is going to drive, and does it prevent you from going forward with the model of the billable hour that we've had forever? Since my first day of practice, I've been told the billable hour is going away. Still here, many, many years later. How do you think about those issues?
Before the billable hour, there were retainers, and clients would give you X amount of dollars to do all their work during the year, and there was no bill sent, just work was done.
For services rendered.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the billable hour came along, and people are used to that, and I'm, in 43 years, billable hour is going to go away. We got better models. It hasn't happened. People can calculate billable hours. They can say, okay, it should have taken you 3 hours. You charged me 4 hours. I'm going to complain about that. You did it in 2 hours. I'm very happy. People can look at it's an objective thing that they can look at and understand why they were charged what they were charged.
In the future, they're going to have their AI complain to you about that.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct. But the majority of my bills are still basically paragraph. Here's what I did. Bill.
And in fact,
I'm the last person left here who can still do it, I think.
I'm very envious of that format. In fact, when we have some clients who want to negotiate or have us prepare an alternative fee arrangement, a flat fee, often, not always, but often, our clients still want to see how many hours it took to charge that $10,000. They want to see the value in that $10,000
They want to
charge.
see if they beat you or not.
Yeah, right. Who won this month?
Yeah. For me, that's the reason that the billable hour has persisted so long, is that everybody keeps score the old way. And if you feel like your law firm is always winning against you in that negotiation, you're unhappy. And if you win that negotiation often enough, your law firm's unhappy, and you don't want an unhappy lawyer. So I think it's staying, although I think that I don't know, do you worry about the level of efficiency that there's just not going to be enough work to support all of this, or are you okay with bring all the work you can, we'll get it done?
Yeah, I don't worry that there's not going to be enough work. I think, knock on wood. I believe that, again, there's never going to be a substitute, at least not in our lifetime, for human input and for gained judgment over one's career. And while things will get quicker, it just means we're going to have access to more information to analyze and to perform judgment on.
I saw one of our corporate law fellows in the lobby. She's a summer associate here, so I'm asking this one for her. What are the main aspects that you expect a incoming associate to bring to the firm?
Yeah, I'll list a couple. And in fact, it's interesting. I just met with the summer associates here a few minutes ago over lunch to talk about the firm and things like that. And there was a similar question. And I look at curiosity, I look at resourcefulness, and I look at value add improvement. One, are you curious? Do you question why things are what they are? You can't walk around questioning everything and everybody. But if you see a piece of work product, if you see a case, do you question whether it's accurate or how good it is or how well it matches up? Resourcefulness, can you find the answer through one of the tools, hopefully multiple tools, in your toolkit? Or do you say, I can't find that, or I'm not going to get to that right answer? Are you resourceful in the way you do things? And I think that those two things are really important to the last step. If you're curious and you're resourceful in a solution, then you're going to add value. Try to add value to everything you do. And if you can accomplish at least those three things among some things that George may have or otherwise, I think that you're going to set yourself apart. I would hope that all associates have that, and a lot of them do, particularly the ones that come here. But those are three things that I think will get you ahead pretty quick.
I'm guessing that George never suffered from imposter syndrome, but I could be wrong about that. But what do you say to a young associate? I remember my first week thinking, oh my God, I was just lost in the library for an hour, and that cost somebody whatever it cost back then, $110. And like, oh my God, what am I doing here? What do you say to young associates, incoming associates that are worried about that?
Yeah, and I don't want to jump ahead here, but I got a really good piece of advice from George a long time ago. It applies not just to your question, it applies to a lot of things. You may remember telling me this. If you're in the room, you belong in the room. Don't worry about why you're in the room. If you're there, you belong. That's what I would tell associates. If you're at the firm, you're here for a reason. There's a learning curve, and it takes a little bit to get up it. But if you're here at Dinsmore, people believe in you. They think you're a bright, capable attorney, a good person, and whatever you're feeling is likely natural and will subside.
That's exactly it. I mean, somebody who's been here longer than you, much more experience, thinks you belong here. That should give you the confidence that you need.
So I think we know the best piece of advice Josh has received, and it's from you. So we know, and was that the best advice you've ever given, or is
Absolutely.
it? Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received, George?
Set goals and then hold yourself accountable by measuring those goals every day. So I set goals at the beginning of every year, and I try and measure my progress against those goals every single day.
And what do you do if at the end of the year you haven't met them, or do you always hit them all?
Every year I want to play the piano for a certain amount of time. I fail every single year. So my wife doesn't like when I practice at all. So I try and find time when she's not home to do it. So but you always want to set aspirational goals, and you got to strive to hit them. So I hit probably 80% of them.
So I've heard at least one person say on the podcast, you know, if I set a bunch of goals, then I don't meet them, I'm just going to be disappointed my whole life. You just hit them. So that's
Oh,
or you strive to do better next year.
right.
I think, and I'm with George 100%, and I do some of that. But for me, and this is tongue in cheek, but also serious, I also set easy to achieve goals so I can be in a good mood. Bite-sized goals along the way.
I think if I do something, I keep it on a sheet of paper, and I want to write something every single day. If I've done that, I've made strides towards something. Some days it's 6 things, other days it's just 1, but I made some tangible progress towards one of the goals that I want to achieve that year.
So you prefer stretch goals over realistic goals?
Yep.
I tell people that if you want to see the keys to the kingdom, just come in my office and look at all of my Post-its on my credenza, because they're all lists of goals.
And I budget the same way, aspirationally. I budgeted aspirationally.
Okay. I think we're good. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks
I
for
really
doing it. It's pretty
appreciate
good.